for the Finance and Governance Committee for March 23rd, 2021. Roll call and posting of the agenda.
Member Basua,
Here.
Member Turan,
Here.
Chair Mayor Zaragoza.
Here.
The agenda for this meeting was posted in the City Hall kiosk on Tuesday, March 16th.
Okay, let's stand for to salute our flag and also a moment of silence for all the individuals that there were gunned down in Colorado. Thank you so much. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is public comments not in the agenda. And we have two persons that would like to speak on that item. Items not in the agenda, you got 3 minutes. And of course, this is items that we cannot take any action with these items because they're not in the agenda. So this first speaker that we have is Douglas Portello, followed by Lawrence Stein. Douglas Portello.
Mayor, Mr. Portello is not available at the moment. However, we do have Mr. Stein on the line.
Okay, we'll go with Lawrence Stein. 3 minutes.
Mr. Stein?
Good evening, members of the City Council, members of the committee, public at large. My name is Larry Stein. I'm a resident of Oxnard. I've been a resident of Oxnard since 1982. I wish to speak on items not on the agenda. In particular, we had a meeting several weeks ago setting priorities. City Council met for 6 hours and prioritized 6 categories. Some of these categories had more than 5 items. And again, they were limited to 1 to 5. The concern I have, the priorities for each of the ones were not prioritized. Again, the priorities of all the number 2s were not prioritized. So the actual intervention of the prioritization did not fully take place. But categories were itemized, priorities of each of the items were not. The other item concern was the dollar amounts involved for each project was not fully discussed. It was known that, or among some people, that the money needed for our road repair is almost $200 million. $200 million. That's pretty high. Consider with Measure E, if all Measure E was used for 5 years, that's a $200 million. So priorities really weren't set as far as the cost go, as far as the priorities among the categories are defined. We had 6 categories, 5 priorities in all. For each category, that's 30 priorities. Those 30 priorities were not discussed at all at the special meeting, nor was it discussed subsequently as to how you're going to categorize all these priorities that were then prioritized individually. The dollar amounts involved, where the dollar amounts going to come from, that was not discussed. Again, this is a serious financial issue. Off the side was a product master plan that was discussed 2 weeks previous to that. That's going to take up at least $60 million. Now, some of the priorities discussed among the 25 priorities include some of the items in the product master plan. So this is a pool. What was disturbing was the fact that an item such as the lifeguard program was known as cost by at least one member of the City Council because the lifeguard programs for the city she works for runs through her department. She did not have any discussions. Perhaps it was the lateness of the hour. When the city manager sits an agenda that's going to last 6 hours, at the end of the working day for a lot of people, what kind of attentiveness will be made by city council members at 10 o'clock at night when they've worked 8 hours already? And we're not getting to some items until 11 o'clock at night, and the closing items run until almost midnight. How many hours is that? How attentive can city council be, and how concerned will they be? So we set these meetings. How can it be that we're having an open and just meeting when you prioritize these things late in the evening for 6
20
hours.
seconds.
And again, there's no significant discussion as to what was taking place. Again, this needs to come back to the public for further discussion, another special meeting perhaps, and do this before we set the budgets, because these items were not properly prioritized once they were prioritized in each of the categories. Thank you very much for your time. And I'd like to hear some comment on this. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Do we have Douglas yet, Portello? Okay.
Mr. Portello? Mr.
Hello?
Portello, you have 3 minutes
Yes.
to speak.
Yes, hi, committee chair and committee persons and staff. I would also like to speak on the 5-year priorities plan that, again, I sat through that meeting till midnight, and I just heard what Larry Stein said, and it was a long meeting. I'm sure it was a very long day for the staff, but I would go back to the priorities that were given to us in terms of voting for the additional $40 to $45 million that's added to our budget with Measure E, which passed. So we are looking at lots of things. There's all kinds of things to consider, of course. And, I'm not disagreeing with some of the things that were prioritized. It's just sometimes I feel like we're biting off a little more than we can chew by taking on projects like Socolow and the 4th Street Promenade and other things when we've got some serious financial issues to deal with first. It just kind of seems to me like kind of folks want to have their dessert before they have their dinner. We've got a crumbling seawall. We've got landscaping. We've got the streets. We've got so many things that are just not going well for our city in terms of just maintaining commitments that have already been made before we start advancing to all these very expensive projects. It just seems it all ties together. So you want to introduce more business, that's great. You want to do training, that's great. You want to create, this promenade and increase local businesses which are struggling, that's all great. But let's get some of this infrastructure done first so our city is more attractive to businesses. It's more attractive to people to live here. When you talk about the gateways to the city and all these other things, it is appearances, but it is important to us citizens. It's our quality of life. And it's also for businesses that might have an interest to come to Oxnard to see that this is a leadership in this city that takes care of the basic things first and then moves on to, the kind of pie in the sky things that we all think are great. They're not bad, but I just think we need to get back to basics. We've got a pension debt that's soaring, and we have increased costs in salaries and benefits, and you'll take $20 million right off the top just to cover those items before you add a single staff person or enhance a
Your
single
time is
service.
up.
So I
Thank
just
you. Thank you, Mr. Portello. Okay. Next item is, we don't have any consent items, item C. So our next item is the city clerk department. This is approval of the minutes. The recommendation is that the Finance and Governance Committee approve the minutes of January the 12th regular agenda meeting as presented. Council members, any concerns?
No, I motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, we
I
got
would like to point out just a one little typographical
Okay.
issue in the minutes. So the listing on item D1 of persons presenting, the name is Don, D-O-N, Ecker. And then that one, Does that require a correction? These are the minutes.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. So on item 2, it states that the deputy city manager gave a report. I believe that that report was the pre-recorded one under, it was posted with the agenda. So maybe if the minutes could just reflect
Ms.
that.
Klima, okay. Councilwoman Basua, with those corrections, are you okay with the first?
Yes, definitely. I'll motion to include the corrections that Mr. Fisher just said and approve the minutes.
And Councilmember Turan, second?
Yes, I'll second that. Thank you.
Okay, roll call?
Yes,
Member Turan,
Yes.
Chair Mayor Zaragoza.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you. That is approved. Our next item is D1 reports. The Public Works Department, this is a request of Mayor Zaragoza to appropriate funds for park maintenance. The recommendation is the Finance and Governance Committee recommend that the City Council consider the request of Mayor Zaragoza to appropriate funds for park maintenance in the amount of $300,000 from the available fund balance, General Fund 101. But council members, we have 14 speakers. Do you want to hear the speakers before we discern the information? Councilmember Turan?
Thank you, Mayor. I think that would be great to hear from the speakers as well. And I think if we remind the public too that the presentation was pre-recorded and they had to watch it ahead of time, they won't see it here tonight.
Thank you for that. Okay. Councilman Basu, we're okay. Okay, so we'll go ahead and start off. We have 14 speakers and it's 3 minutes apiece. The first 2 speakers is Manuel Herrera, followed by Daniel Chavez Jr. Manuel Herrera, 3 minutes.
Mr. Herrera?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
You have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Manuel Herrera. I am the creator of Citizens for a Better Oxnard. However, I'm here representing myself. I am calling to show my support for the request by Mayor Zaragoza to the City Council to appropriate $300,000 from the available fund balance in the general fund for park maintenance. I believe that this would be money well spent, especially since these funds would benefit the general public. I also see this as a down payment from Measure E funds. As you know, we will not be seeing the bulk of these funds until September. But if we appropriate these funds now, our kids and their families can enjoy our parks, especially since they have been cooped up in their homes due to COVID. Let's get our kids away from their computers and allow them to enjoy the beautiful Oxnard weather. I have reviewed the video regarding this item, and I don't see a downside. Now, obviously, your job today is to look at all the pros and cons and see if this is something that's worth doing. So I look forward to watching you guys discuss this. But again, as I stated, I don't see a downside to this. And this is something, again, that would benefit the public. And they're due for something good like this. Let's get back to the parks. Now, obviously, we're still under COVID. I know that. They know that. But at least things are starting to open up a little. This will be a good way, some goodwill from the city for the citizens of Oxnard. So I trust that you will make the right decision on this and something that can benefit the citizens of Oxnard. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate all that you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. Our next speaker is Daniel Chavez, followed by Charlene Aguilera Fort, and he's a superintendent of Oxnard School District. Daniel Chavez.
Daniel Chavez?
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening, committee members, Oxnard residents, and staff. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Mayor Zaragoza for his leadership on this item. I will also like to say that I am not here in my official capacity as a commissioner, but as a lifelong resident of the city of Oxnard. As we know, the pandemic has affected not only the city of Oxnard, but communities across our nation, including across the world. Just last week marked the 1 year anniversary of this pandemic that ultimately shut down so many businesses, schools, and other activities throughout our communities. In March of 2020, our schools were cut short. Seniors did not get the opportunity to participate in those senior activities, and even the start of the school year was also altered. As a father of a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, I can tell you one of the most important things is the ability to interact with other children and the ability to run wild through the parks like so many of us did when we were younger. And I say that because I know for myself, it would be a little hard to keep up with the younger generation running through the parks. I appreciate Mayor Zaragoza bringing this item forward. And it is the leadership that I have called on for council members for a number of years to bring items and work with staff in the best interest of our community. I believe this is like the previous speaker, Mr. Herrera, pointed out, it is an investment in our community. Our children need the interaction. They need the ability to run wild, to burn off that energy, and to be able to socialize. I understand that we still have our COVID restrictions, but Oxnard residents, and I can speak from actual experience, we are on a lot better path of following guidelines than our neighbors to the south in LA County. We follow the guidelines that are set before us because we take those responsible steps. So I urge this committee to send the recommendation to the council for approval of the appropriations of these funds to
30 seconds.
make the maintenance, have the maintenance take place for these parks, and so that our children could once again be able to run through our parks, to be able to enjoy the outdoors with their families, and simply just to burn the energy and give their parents a break. I thank the committee for the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chavez. Our next speaker is Charlene Aguilera Fort. He is the superintendent of Oxnard School District, followed by Jacqueline Munoz. Charlene.
Mayor, we do not have Mr. Aguilera Fort available. However, we do have Jacqueline Munoz
Okay,
on
we
the
have,
line.
okay, Jacqueline Munoz. Please. Mhm.
Ms. Jacqueline Munoz?
Hi.
Hi, you have 3
Hi.
minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you, committee and Mayor Zaragoza, for this opportunity. I support Mayor Zaragoza in favor of this item. As a godmother of a 3-year-old, I look forward to taking her to the park every Friday on my day off. And I think it's a beautiful thing that to upkeep the parks for our children, as the speaker before me beautifully said, our children and our families have been cooped up during this pandemic. And I think this year people are more than excited to be outside with our children and, with a clean park and, clean pathways and beautiful and freshly cut trees. I think it would be a great thing for our youth and our families, for picnics, to walk the dogs. And hopefully this will pass for the funding. And thank you for this opportunity and all that you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Our next speaker is Jacob J., followed by Douglas Partello. Jacob J.
Jacob?
Hello.
Jacob, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi there. I was just calling in to let everyone know that I do support Mayor Zaragoza in the appropriation of funds for park maintenance. And I think this is something that is extremely vital to our community, and it could benefit everyone from all walks of life, especially our environment too. I want everyone to think about the importance parks play a role in our environment. Feel free to look it up. It improves water quality, protecting groundwater. If we ever have storms, it can help prevent flooding. It improves the quality of air. We want that, especially with all the crops that we have being grown in Oxnard. and it could produce a habitat for our wildlife that we have here. I think a lot of people forget we have little wild animals roaming here. But more importantly, I think it promotes community wellness. And I think that's something that's extremely vital to touch upon. Like speakers before me, the effects this pandemic has had is insane, causing children to be cooped up in their homes, and it has a dramatic effect on mental health, and I think that plays a major role. And if we want to encourage kids to be going to parks, I can imagine they don't want to go to parks that are all run down, covered in dirt, and basically not appealing in any way. I used to work at the Boys and Girls Club, and I'll tell you that the kids absolutely love the parks here. So I definitely agree with the appropriation of the funds for park maintenance. I think it's important for our community, for a safe place to gather, and most importantly for children. And we can help defeat this sorrow that the pandemic has brought us. And I think it's a great, great step for these funds to be put towards park maintenance. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. Our next speaker is Douglas Bartello, followed by Armando Delgado. Douglas Bartello.
Mr. Partello?
Hello?
Yes, hi. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Yes, thank you for this opportunity. Chair Zaragoza and committee, I am very much for this appropriation of funds for the park maintenance. Our parks have been neglected for so long that we really have unsafe parks that people just don't want to go there. So they haven't been used because people just don't feel safe there. So I think this is a great first step. I think the $300,000 is just a drop in the bucket for what's really needed here. And obviously we can't do everything all at once. I think this is a positive step. I'm very much in support of it. I hope it also includes things like, handling the gophers. We have a lot of gophers. We have equipment for the kids that, is unsafe. We have lighting issues. So this is just a good first step, but there's so much to do to, reclaim our parks and make them safe and attractive. And all of the things the other speakers said are very much true. This is a quality of life issue. This is the health of our children to go out and be active and get exercise, and for the families and people of all ages, enjoy our parks. And I think it's extremely important. I was sad that it didn't rate higher on the 5-year plan, like with that park maintenance master plan that was done. I think that was beautifully done. I think there was a lot of effort and energy that went into that. And I just hope that doesn't sit on the shelf. And I hope this is just something that can start the ball rolling, really. It's not really the answer, but it's a start. And I think it's good. I think it's great. And I'm glad Mayor Zaragoza put this forward to do that. It just kind of makes you wonder, well, why does it have to be an appropriation? I mean, can we get back to just including this kind of very basic maintenance and service in the budget to begin with? And hopefully when we get out of this COVID time and we wrestle with some of these financial issues and get over the hump, so to speak, that, this will again become a priority in maintaining our parks. We have sprinkler systems that are really pretty bad. And I've been out there. I started the Oxnard Grassroots Volunteers, and I've been out doing landscaping, been out with Marvin in the parks, cleaning up parks. And we also need the communities to get some ownership and responsibility and partnering and, keeping our parks safe and vibrant, that we have a shared responsibility. It's not just the city, it's all of us. And, once this kind of momentum can start, I think more people will get involved. I think they'll take better ownership. They'll take more pride in our parks. They'll be more active with our parks. And so hopefully this is just a good first step on the path to, revitalizing a very important part of our quality of life here in
Your
Oxnard.
time is up.
Thank you, Mr. Bartello. Thank you. Our next speaker is Armando Delgado, followed by Fernando Lopez. Armando? Mhm.
Armando Delgado?
I am here.
Yes, thank you. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you so much. Good evening, committee members, staff, and fellow residents. My name is Armando Delgado. I am a lifelong resident of Oxnard. I've spent much of my time, available time, in Oxnard open space, parks, and community centers. I've grown up, volunteered at, and coached in these parks, many of them. I'm a member of Carpenters Local 805. I represent a union that is trying to build better community wealth. We are helping employ as many residents as we can on our local jobs. Our members are tired of hearing from so many dissenting members of our community about how multiple problems throughout the city. We're here to say enough. Let's start supporting solutions. We're here to praise your efforts in dealing with all of these problems, starting with this one. Thank you, Councilmember Basua, for cleaning up of South Oxnard. Thank you, Mayor Zaragoza, for being a true leader and voice of Oxnard. Many carpenters live throughout the county, but the majority of us live right here in Oxnard. Some time ago, our city made the decision to cut back expenses. I also know what it feels like to make a difficult decision. Councilmember Turan, thank you for educating our carpenters on what Parks and Recreation has to deal with. Thank you for getting us involved and providing feedback to surveys to better our open space and community. With restaurants, retail, and park space limited, we need money to fund landscaping services and watering of our parks. As you take time to decide whether to allocate funds for the parks, please consider what it means to all of us, especially someone like myself. The pandemic didn't help anyone either. Your choices have direct impact on my life and my family's. I'm an avid park goer, and I mean all of them in Oxnard. It gets old going to the same dry brown one. I know that more time spent in parks and green spaces can help individuals like myself fight against stress of long days at work. Community leaders, tradesmen, and residents throughout Oxnard have provided their input to Oxnard City Council and will keep speaking in support of our parks. We have remained essential throughout this pandemic, and we know that we have burdened the task of stimulating our local economy. Use my tax dollars to water the lawn, bring back a few hardworking city employees, and imagine my son throwing a baseball, my daughter flying a kite, and my baby rolling around on a green grass, having a tea party with daddy and the German Shepherd. Please recommend that the City Council consider the request to appropriate funds for park maintenance.
40 seconds.
Available fund balance. Let's go out and play ball. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Delgado. Our next speaker is Fernando Lopez, followed by Ramon Escudero. Fernando Lopez.
Fernando Lopez?
I'm here.
Hi, yes, you have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Fernando Lopez. Good evening, committee members, staff, and fellow Oxnard residents. I'm a military veteran. Throughout my career, I was in different bases, different parts of the world. But after all those places, I decided to make Oxnard my home. Part of the reason is the parks, the public areas, and the community that gathers in these places. Lately, because of the pandemic, we have been isolated and we have been in our homes. I myself have been able to get out to work, and I've been working this whole time very hard to keep my family and the community going. But my family has been trapped, and we need these parks. We need to be able to be outside and breathe fresh air. Being outdoors has been proven to be helpful for mental health, physical health, emotional health, and just the health of the community. I myself am also part of the Carpenters Union, the 805 local, and we've been working hard trying to get everybody back, not just to work, but to live the way we used to, or better. That's the idea, always to be better. We need these parks to be open again for kids. They need to be outside running, not inside looking at the screen for the whole day. They're doing looking at the screens for school. They need to go outside and breathe fresh air and roll in the grass in the afternoons for them and for the parents. Please help us make this happen. Help us bring these people that take care of our parks to be back at work as well. I know they miss it, they need it. And the Springbrook City back to where it's supposed to be. And we were in a great upward trend before this happened, and we understand with this pandemic, everything is slowed down, but we cannot let it stop or go backwards. We need to move forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Our next speaker is Ramon Escudero, followed by Kyle. And Kyle is Spanish speaking, and when we get there, she'll get 6 minutes. Ramon Escudero.
Mr. Ray Escudero?
Raymond. Mhm.
Yes, hello, I'm here.
Yes, sir. Thank you. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Good evening, committee members, staff, and Oxnard residents. I just would like to say I support Mayor Zaragoza and the appropriation of park funds maintenance. I was born and raised here in Oxnard. I had a troubled youth. I'm a union carpenter, proud union carpenter. Was able to get my life back on track through the trades. I've been an essential worker for this whole pandemic. I got nephews. I got an 18-month-old daughter. It would be nice just to go to the park just for the evening, maybe have a picnic. You know, I also cater, so I used to cater a lot in the parks. Park's something I do. Hopefully we can do this now so it's ready for the summertime. You know, I've been walking through the parks in my area right here. I got a bunch of crabgrass. You know, my nephews want to play baseball again. You know, a bunch of things they can do. They're stuck at home staring at their screens. So I just want to say thank you for your time, and I support this measure here. Thank you.
Thank you, Raymond. Our next speaker is Kyle, and Kyle is Spanish speaking, and she can go for 6 minutes, and that's followed by Roger Poirier. Kyle.
Teléfono.
Kyle is not available at the moment.
Maybe she'll come back after. Roger is the next one.
It's on mute.
Roger, and then followed by Juan.
Roger Poirier?
Good evening, Mayor Zaragoza, Councilmember Basua, Councilmember Tehran, and Mr. City Manager and staff. As a Parks and Rec Commissioner, it's really gratifying to hear the support from our very eloquent residents on the topic of parks and park maintenance. It's, I mean, I don't have much to add to what Manny Herrera and Daniel Chavez Jr. have said. They pretty much covered it. But I will say that to some of the questions about the Parks and Recreation Master Plan and volunteerism, there has been a lot of discussion. We have our city staff is kind of standing up an Adopt a Park program. So for all the Oxnard residents who love their parks and want to do more, there will be opportunities, I'm sure, in the not too distant future, to come out to our parks and roll up your sleeves and get some stuff done. That'll help with Mayor Zaragoza's brilliant idea to put some money into park maintenance. This is a fantastic thing to do as the weather is warming up and people are going to want to get out into their parks. It's one of the safest things you can do during a pandemic, as long as we're all socially distanced. But it's you know, being outside is a great way to stay healthy and to enjoy these assets of the city. So for everybody who's is here to speak tonight on this issue, I just invite you to come to our Parks and Recreation Commission meetings. We'd love to have you. We'd love to hear your insights and your opinions about our parks and our recreation programs. We meet every fourth Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. We have a meeting tomorrow evening. There's still time to register to be a public speaker, and we'd love to have you. So you can find our agenda in the most recent weekly packet, or you can download it on the city website. Once again, Mayor Zaragoza, thank you so much for bringing this to this committee and to the council. And I certainly hope that it's supported by your colleagues. And oh yeah, one last thing about the council priorities. not long before the city council, in fact, I believe it was the same week that the council started discussing council priorities, they had already adopted the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which was a multi-year effort. Several $100,000 was invested into producing that report, and that, if anything, is a declaration of a priority. Right? And certainly the commission was very grateful for the comments from council when you adopted the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. We feel like it shows a lot of support from the council for our parks and recreation programs. And so we know that that will continue to be a priority for the city council. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Roger. And thank you for excellent work, and also your commissioners. Thank you so much for that. Our next speaker is Juan, followed by Alex Perez. Juan.
Mayor, we do not have Juan available. Alex is also not available.
Alex not available. Then our next speaker is Marvin Booz.
Marvin Booz? You have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, thank you. My name is Marvin Booth. I live in the Fremont North neighborhood. I'm calling to say that I totally support Mayor Zaragoza's wanting to provide funds for park maintenance. Heaven only knows I've cleaned up 6 or 7 of them myself, so I know they need a lot of work. They've been neglected for probably a year, 2 years, 3 years. And when you get 50 to 100 bags of green waste out of every park, you know there's been no maintenance. I see a lot of people at the park regardless. And I've also noticed that besides the park just for the kids, over at Conley Park, that park is basically for the seniors. There's no barbecues. There's no park benches. I'll take that back. There's no picnic tables. There's no playground. It's basically for citizens to go there for peace and quiet, be able to read, walk. A lot of people walk their dogs. So the different parks have different requirements for different people. And it takes money for maintenance. You can't just do it once a year. So that's all I wanted to say is I totally support Mayor Zaragoza's proposal. Thank you.
And Marvin, on behalf of the City Council and residents of Oxnard, thank you for all the work that you do for Oxnard. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Madam Clerk, any other speakers we had? Juan didn't come through, or Charlene? No?
Oh, not at this time.
Okay, so that's our last speakers. Council members, Councilmember Turan and Councilmember Basua, I'd like to share a couple of words before, and then we can go from there. Is that okay? Okay. I think first of all, I basically want to make a motion, that we recommend this item placed before, for our future city council to discuss and consider an appropriation of funds for park maintenance. The current level, as you know, of parks is on a monthly basis, mowing schedule. My recommendation is, again, to increase that service level to a weekly mowing service. The potential cost for the 3 months is about $300,000. And the estimated cost for weekly mowing of 33 parks would be about $100,000 a month. Park maintenance is currently developing a budget for the 2021-22 budget to be potentially approved here by July 1. Council members, I have received, probably like you have, numerous calls regarding the need for our parks to be brought to a usable condition. Residents' concerns are brought about due to the pandemic, as mentioned by a lot of the speakers. Their children have been behind closed doors, causing children and kids to be glued to laptops, siblings fighting, parents complaining about their kids wanting to go out and play at the parks. Excuse me. Many of our youth are also obese, overweight, and showing signs of illness. In fact, I did a little bit of research, and I found out for our youth that by being on the parks, they're happier. It helps their mental health. It can reduce stress and depression. They develop a self-esteem which will improve as time progresses. It also is noticed by some of the parents when they go out and play that they come back and they're really much happier. Outdoor exercise will stimulate their five senses and impact the brain in a positive way. Vitamin D, vitamin D goes up. As we all know, it is called the sunshine vitamin. Many studies have seen that protective studies that vitamin D really helps tremendously for depression, heart attacks, or even strokes, even for children. And you need several days to go out and play in the sun. And of course, if they play in the sun, you're going to need some sunscreen. Also, number 4, it says exercise will burn a lot of calories, a tremendous amount of calories. And I'm sure that the parents will notice that signs of obesity will go down. Outdoors exercise can help burn calories by walking, running, and keeping active, and running with your dogs in the leash too, by the way. And as was mentioned by many of the speakers, we're just entered into the spring, and the summer season is just around the corner. So let's work and maintain our parks in a weekly schedule so we can enjoy a freshly mowed, watered lawn to keep our minds off the laptops. And as one of the speakers says, you know, that when he gets off of work, he really enjoys going on to the park and just relaxing. Even the parents can enjoy that. It's really great to have barbecues and just enjoy the clean air. And especially here in Oxnard, when we get that fresh air coming from the ocean, it's really fantastic. So additionally, council members, I know this request is out of the norm. It's probably unique because we have not adopted the budget yet. But however, due to the pandemic, COVID-19, our children and our families need to benefit from a well-maintained park. Council members, this item is also supports a quality of life strategy that have been supported by the City Council. The purpose of quality life, as you know, strategy is to build relationships and create opportunities within the community for a safe, prosperous community and vibrant neighborhoods within our city. That is my little presentation, and Council Member Tehran and okay, Councilwoman Basua, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your comments. Greatly appreciated. I have to admit that when I saw this on the agenda, it was kind of surprising because, like you said, it's out of the norm to bring something like this in the middle. So I was getting my wish list started, but I know it's out of the norm and I know it's COVID related. So I really, really want to thank you for that, for bringing this item forward. I think it is great. I think it is something that is definitely needed. I appreciate your leadership, and I do have a few questions though for staff in regards to this. One of the speakers, Manuel Herrera, said that we would be using what he called a down payment of Measure E. I would just like some clarification of where the money, because as we all know, we had budget deficit. We made very difficult cuts to the budget back in July. You know, what has changed? We don't have that money yet from Measure E. So if we can get an explanation on where this money is going to come from for the next 3 months. And like the mayor said, I believe it's going to be in the budget moving forward. So with that,
we have Alex.
Yes, I can field that very quickly through the chair, Council Member Basua. The funds for this, should the city council approve, would come from the current general fund reserve. So I think the phrase down payment from Measure E is just an expression because ultimately it's all general fund dollars. Now, with regard to going forward, staff will certainly be recommending appropriate funding levels for all the green items that we discussed when we discussed our priorities: parks, grass, trees, medians, park strips, and so on, which is the side of the road adjacent to the sidewalks, as well as streets and potholes and alleys and all of that. So we expect to make not only recommendations, but provide within those recommendations options for the council. I think it's sensible for everyone to expect that there will be large investments in the upcoming budget, but that is, again, a decision for the entire council at a later date, but soon to come. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, to our city manager. You know, I'm really, really excited about this moving forward. As we all know, it's no secret that we really, really need this. And I think that, again, let's thank the mayor, thank our city staff for moving forward on this sooner rather than later. And it's very, very encouraging. And I hope the residents of Oxnard realize that this administration is ready to put those investments back into the community. And I'm really, really thankful for that. So with that being said, definitely, I agree with this recommendation 110%. And those are my comments, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilmember Turan.
Thank you very much, Mayor Zaragoza, and thank you for bringing this forward. And I appreciate all the speakers reaching out to share their thoughts. And when the speakers are speaking, I'm always taking note of some of the points that are being made and kind of where people are falling, just as a general sense. And one thing that I want to say first is I am in support of this. I do have just a quick question for Mr. Howlett. And this is something that I think is important for the public to hear. And it may be a concern that comes up from some members of the public. I would like to look at it, and that's the cost. I did hear one of the speakers say that a $300,000 total contract to do this work is a drop in the bucket. When you have a $500 million budget total for the city, I mean, absolutely, it's a drop in the bucket. But just to alleviate any concerns that other members of the public might have, Mr. Howlett, can you speak to how this is an appropriation moving forward, asking the council to approve it versus the actual contract amount that we would ultimately get from bidding?
Thank you, Councilmember Tran. Yes, this project is currently out for bid and will be, the bid closes March 31st. And so with the timing of this committee meeting, we had to ask for a heavy number. We're expecting the bids to come in, lower than the 300,000. And then anything that's not used will just be returned back to the general fund. Also, moving forward, we have, as the city manager had alluded to, we have started the process of the other contracts that'll be going out through the city, including next year's maintenance of the parks. That's currently out to bid and will be closing on April 8th. Now, this will become part of our budget discussions, as the city manager had spoken about. Is we're going to be giving council options of how moving forward and what the costs are. And so these bids that close on April 8th for, if approved, will begin in July, but we'll have options to be considered as well.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Just a quick comment, Mr. Mayor, if I.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
And thank you for that. I just, as I mentioned, I support this. I was concerned that there may be members of the public out there who are a little worried about $300,000 or $100,000 a month. So I was happy to hear that that's just the amount we're asking to make sure whatever the bid comes back at is covered. So thank you for that. The last things I'll say are, as a former Parks and Recreation Community Services Commission commissioner, I have to say that this is near and dear to my heart. Seeing the parks have to go with a lower maintenance cycle this past couple of fiscal years has been difficult. And there are some parks with incredibly long grass or dead grass or overgrown landscaping or dead landscaping. And I know that starting with the basic maintenance is going to do what is referred to as activating or reactivating our park space, which it's going to make it more inviting to the public. If you make it inviting, people will come, people will use the space. And when they use the space, as our speakers and our mayor and council member Basua had mentioned, this is going to increase and improve community health, social determinants of health, and well-being of our residents and our community. And the last thing I'll say is that you had mentioned young people, Mayor Zaragoza, and there's some very early initial data that's coming out for our every other year Healthy Kids survey that's done across the state. And one of the earliest measurements I saw was that before the pandemic, about 37% of students in Ventura County who were surveyed stated that they felt that they had been sad for the last 2 weeks or more, which is one of the diagnostic criteria of clinical depression. After those who took the survey after COVID had started, where it was 37% before, now it's 44%, nearly half. And it's difficult now to say if there's a direct correlation between COVID and isolation and not socializing with peers that's involved in that. But it's certainly a data point that's out there that we need to pay attention to. So the sooner we can return to normal and have inviting parks and be able to get people out there for all those benefits we all just talked about, the better. So I certainly support this as well. And I believe the mayor made the motion. Is that correct?
Right. Mhm.
Okay. And our committee member Basua, did you second it? No. Okay.
Not yet. Go ahead.
Do we need a second? Yes.
Well,
Yes, go ahead, Mr.
thank you. I'll go ahead and second. Thank you. Thank
I
you.
know it's dear and near to your heart.
Okay. The second by Councilmember Turan. Yes. Okay, before we go to vote, I just want to share that this is extremely important it's a down payment, for our children, and it was mentioned by the speakers. And I know Councilmember Turan and also Councilwoman Basua working with a lot of children in South Oxnard and the Cabrillo and North Oxnard and Colonia, they need those parks and we need to have those kids go out and play and sweat and run and jump, and get rid of a lot of that fat, that they've developed and so forth. But I just want to thank all the speakers too for that, and so with that, we'll have roll call.
Member Turan,
Yes.
Member Basua,
Yes.
Chair Mayor Zaragoza.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, our next item is.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
My apologies. Before we move on to the next item, just something that came up on the list we have of public speakers for items not on the agenda. We had Councilmember Perello listed, and I see he was on the attendees list as well. I'm not sure if he got skipped or not.
No, that's unfortunately, according to the Brown Act, he cannot participate in a committee event, so I know that our city attorney mentioned already to Mr. Perello, but we would love to have him, but according to the rules, go ahead, Steve, our city attorney's going to share. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So under the Brown Act, with a standing committee of the City Council, other council members who are not on that standing committee, they can attend the standing committee meeting, but they cannot participate. They can only observe. So we take that limitation very strictly, and there are other channels for Council Member Perello to have his voice heard with what he was intending to speak about.
All right, I appreciate the clarification on that. Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. All right, my apologies on the interruption. I just wanted to make that clear because I saw that and saw he was here and wasn't sure if that was on accident. So thank you.
Council member, that's good information for all of us anyway for the future. So, because we're limited under the Brown Act to participate in some of the committees. Thank you so much. Okay, our next item is this is the Information Technology Department. This is the renewal of Tyler/New World 911 system, and this again was the finance for the finance and Government Committee to recommend to the City Council that we approve and authorize the mayor to execute a sixth amendment to this agreement. 5463, 11 PD with Tyler Technology through June 30th, 2026, increasing the agreement amount from 7.5 million to 9.7 million. 2.2 million increase over the next 5 years for the renewal of public safety, calls dispatch software licenses and services. And this again was under Measure M. It was a pre-recorded presentation. And we have Raha, excuse me, if we have any additional questions, and also I see the chief there too. So any questions, council members on this item? It's a really important item. Oh, Council Member Tehran.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the staff for the presentation. I'm looking at it now and I see that only 14 people, unfortunately, have seen it. And I know that at least 3 of them are in this meeting right now. And I just have a quick question, and this comes up often for items that are being funded by Measure O. I saw that this is a very important piece of equipment or an agreement that we're having for public safety. And my first question is, can you please, could someone explain to the public exactly what this is and what it does, what purpose it serves? And then my second question is, right now, if we were to lose Measure O because of the passage of Measure N, or I should say Measure O was diverted to roads instead of what else it was meant to be used for, what is the backup plan if we were not able to use Measure O to fund this effort, which is an ongoing cost?
Okay, Chief, you want to answer that? Go ahead, Chief Benitez.
I believe it'd be most appropriate for me to tackle the first part of that question, which is what is this? And what this system that we were talking about is referred to our computer assisted dispatch system, also known as CAD. What that system does is it actually processes incoming calls into the police center, which are then documented by the call taker or the dispatcher, which is then transformed into a call. That is then placed into a queue, which is then allowed to be dispatched to the officers. It also includes a GPS system that actually shows the unit locations on a map, which greatly increases the officer safety. There are other things in there that trigger reminders to check on the status of the unit. It tracks our dispositions of the unit. And very importantly, at the end of the day, when we need to retrieve data in terms of calls that we responded to, this is the system that we go to. This is essentially one lobe of the police department's brain. Its central nervous system is our CAD system, a very, very critical, cannot do without system.
And Chief, just the other day, the 911 is off for a couple of hours, and we had a multitude of concerns from the public, which 911 is extremely important to all of us.
Yes, it is kind of, they are separate components. The outage that took place with 911 was actually a Frontier Communications issue. It wasn't anything to do with our hardware, but it did affect the 911 calls coming in. But despite that, our CAD system still was functioning. We were just not receiving the 911 calls. We were receiving the 10-digit calls, but we weren't receiving specifically 911 calls. But again, the system is absolutely critical to have.
So, and thank you for the explanation. That's important for the public to understand. Rahal, you have some additional...
And Mayor, I can answer the second question, please.
Oh, okay.
Councilmember Tehran, so to your second question, I think this is true to all of the Measure O programs and contracts and so forth that are outstanding. If Measure O ceases to exist, all of those, the city will be on the hook for all of those. And so the city's general fund would need to pay for those, or we would have to find some other source of funding.
And that's really important for the public to understand how Measure O is really important to all of us, because some of those funding, it will be gone, you know, if we lose Measure O, potentially.
Thank you, Ms. Klima. And thank you, Chief Benitez, for those responses.
Okay, any additional questions? Like I said, I think 911 is extremely important. I just, we just see what happened the other day, and unfortunately in Colorado and over in Atlanta, and hopefully, you know, we don't need 911, but it's important for all of us. So council members, we need a motion.
Motion to approve?
Okay, Councilman Basua and second by Councilman Turan. Roll call.
Councilmember Basua,
Yes.
Councilmember Turan,
Yes.
Chair Mayor Zaragoza.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 3-0.
Council members, our next item is any future agenda items that you'd like to see in this committee, council members? Any future agenda items? Potential? Okay.
Not me.
Councilmember Turan?
Thank you very much, Mayor Zaragoza. One thing that comes to mind at the top of this meeting, I appreciate the moment of silence we had for people who were tragically gunned down this week. It pains me very much to say this week as a qualifier in that sentence, because I'm going to ask about something that is referring to last week. And with the unfortunate incidents that we've been having, and tragic incidents and despicable crimes against our Asian American Pacific Islander communities, I would like to ask that this committee, if we have the ability to do so, forward to council a recommendation for to start with a resolution condemning these acts of hate against our Asian American Pacific Islander communities. And I've spoken with Councilmember Perello about it as well. And we've actually both agreed that this is something that we'd like to move forward to the council to make a statement about this. And I don't know if this is the appropriate venue to ask for that, but I would like to mention it now because it's something that's been weighing heavily on me as an individual, not just as a council member.
Yeah, council member, I'm sure we can bring that, but we'll have our city attorney give us some comments on that.
Thank you, Mayor. So the process as set forth in the council's procedures manual for bringing an item forward is similar to what we went through earlier in the meeting with the parks item, is that the request should be submitted either in writing in detail to the city clerk or brought up at council business at a council meeting. And then once that request is in place, then the item gets placed on the appropriate committee agenda, and this would probably be the appropriate committee, but it's an agendized item. So just as today, when you had 14 speakers sign up to speak on whether to have that parks item go on a future council agenda, people would have the opportunity to weigh in on it at that juncture. So
but
we can get this on a future Finance and Governance Committee agenda in order to go through this process. That's the process that's set forth in your rules of procedure, and I would advise you follow your rules of procedure.
But Mr. City Attorney, I don't believe that we have to recommend through the committee. I'm sure that we can put it on the agenda, on the regular agenda on the following meeting. But I don't believe that we need to do it through the committee. I think we can go ahead and work with the city manager and the city attorney to put it on the agenda, as one of the ceremonial agenda items, potentially, if as I'm correct.
Can I interrupt here? Can we have our city manager? I mean, I think that, thank you, Councilmember Tehran, for bringing this up. And I think this is something that we should do urgently. So if our city manager can maybe talk here on how we can do this. This is something that we need to get done as soon as possible. I don't think we have time for committee and so on and so forth.
I think we can do it right off. Mr. City Manager, is that correct?
Well, the city attorney, I believe, is obviously correct about the rules, but I think this is not a standard agenda item or even a standard ceremonial item.
Right.
We have ceremony items throughout the year that we never run through committee, and this particular issue is more of in my mind, more of a national emergency or urgency item. So it is. I think it's different from that perspective.
but we can bring it up in the next city council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. If we are able to do that, that would be my request. If
Or
that was.
the city attorney has.
So I would suggest that the usual route to get on a council agenda then is through the administrative placement of an item on a coming council agenda.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, everybody, very much for that.
Thank you, council member. Okay, so then we adjourn until 6:45 when we have the Committee to Service, Public Service, Housing Development Committee, and we'll adjourn until 6:45. Thank you.